This is Back Talk, and I'm your host, Elizaveta Federmesser. Today my guest is writer, editor, and curator, Marie Healy. Listen up. Claire, I'll be completely frank with you. I'm a bit nervous today because I just read so much of your work in preparation to this conversation. And I think today I made the cardinal mistake of listening to you on another podcast just before having a conversation. So I'm completely flabbergasted by the amount of information and questions that are just penetrating my head all the time.
Oh no, don't worry. Oh my goodness, no. I don't do this kind of thing very often myself, so you don't need to worry.
Okay, thank you. I'm usually never making this mistake, but I don't know what came over me this morning. Also, I must say, great podcast. Can of Worms, Worm World. Wow, what a giggle.
Yeah, I know.
Shout
That was
out,
such a fun
Summer,
one.
amazing.
I know Summer Murray, she's so good at it, and she's such a joy. I just think she should like be interviewed, you know. She's just amazing. Yeah, you should
Yeah,
definitely
now
like
I'm
follow her
gonna
stuff.
listen to everything. I also hope she's gonna get Julia Fox. But
Yeah.
to that, but to that matter, I approach you for this conversation, sort of upon receiving the amazing book that is the catalog of the latest show at MoMu called Girls on Boredom, Rebellion, and Being in Between, at which you were guest curator of the film program. And that's a fantastic exhibition that I was unfortunately not lucky to see in person, but the book is amazing. I highly recommend it to everyone, with fantastic essays by you and many other authors, just adding them to my future guest list. And I really was truly inspired by it, and I really love your essay there as well, on the girlhood and how just the moment of becoming is represented on film. I think it is also, as I understand, because I wasn't on the show, but it's sort of the understanding of your film curation in the show, how you prepared for it. Is it true? Is everything that's in the essay was in the show as well? Was it just clips, or how did it work?
The essay, I think, goes a little bit beyond what was necessarily in the curation, but there are quite a few matches. Obviously, with the installation, you come up against the issue of licensing
Hmm.
those clips, which is a whole other world of just, you know, the most obscure French film that nobody's seen will cost, you know, literally thousands of pounds. And then, you know, Sophia
Wow.
Coppola will give you it for free. So it's like, it's a bit of a Wild West. But yeah, essentially, in terms of the kind of, yeah, the thrust of that essay um, is, yeah, it does relate to the narrative that I was trying to kind of get across in the installation, just in terms of that, like, not just, you know, okay, what are some nice clothes that girls have worn in coming of age films, but actually looking more specifically at how they move in them, and these gestures, I suppose, of dressing, undressing, and being styled and dressed by others towards kind of expressing your own identity, and I guess looking at like the clothing in certain scenes and certain film projects as a way to tell a bit of a different story about how girlhood is represented on screen. They can kind of be seen as like tools in that way. Yeah, and ultimately as a way to kind of wrest ourselves away from this very patriarchal gaze, which obviously is also, you know, embedded in cinema history. I find it interesting just thinking about, okay, what does a denim jacket do to get us out of that that gaze? Because it does do something.
It
I love
does,
kind of getting into those
absolutely.
details. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I will honestly, off the cuff, I have just an odd question, but we'll get back to that essay and the whole because there are many things to unpack. But did you have a favorite fairy tale when you were growing up, or something that was like the best fairy tale story?
Yeah, it's a good cue. Um, did I have a favorite fairy tale? I'm really interested now in fairy tales as like these kind of early depictions of girlhood, like adolescent girlhood. Like I've written, a lot about the red shoes and even there's the kind of Comme des Garçons campaign image with the Red Riding Hood in um in the catalogue, which I was just looking at again because I knew we were speaking, and it's next to my like small text on the hoodie and like what the hoodie means. And I love that link, like Red Riding Hood and hoodies, and like what hoodies mean to girls in terms of like comfort and protection. And anyway, it's a whole other wormhole.
I was just talking and
Yeah.
contemplating hoodies the other day with my friend, and I said every time I wear a ginormous hoodie, it's also like the only thing I can buy at Brandy Melville is a oversized hoodie, which I think is funny. And then also every time I wear it, I truly feel like Ariana Grande hiding in a ginormous hoodie with like, only the nails sticking out. It's just such
Yeah.
a potato sack comfort of a hoodie that, yeah, but please
Yeah.
continue.
Which is important, I think this idea of like protection, this thing of like the girlhood and clothing and these like items and garments that mean something, I'm really interested in it not just being like kind of girly accessories, I think there's something, yeah, I'm so glad that the hoodie was part of the research in the book for that reason. But favorite fairy tales. Okay, so I loved it's not even a fairy tale, but the movie Anastasia, the like
Oh,
animated
wow.
film. I loved. And I think sometimes when you're that age as well, when you're younger, it's like you're just like, okay, she has like short brown hair and I have short brown hair. And you're like, that's me. So
Yeah.
I think it was like a little bit of that. But yeah, I like follow, I don't know. I've been following this kind of weird meme page all about the animated movie Anastasia, and they do all these funny, it's crazy. It's funny how these things stay with you. But fairy tales themselves, I don't know. I guess you kind of think of like Disney movies and stuff, don't you, when you're like younger? And I think I thought I was a bit cool, so I really liked that Anastasia, the movie, wasn't a Disney film, it was like a Don
Yeah.
Bluth kind of not part of the Disney corporation. So I think I thought, oh, okay, that's the kind of princess that relates to me. So yeah,
Also, this is a fake fairy tale. It's like,
yes,
it's not really a fairy tale. It's very much like the idea of a fairy tale in the end of the 20th century. But I was just asking this question in general about the fairy tales because the more I was going deeper into the Girlhood Studies, your project about how visual culture shapes the experiences of young women, I
mm,
was thinking about how, in general, there is this idea of a girl, which is quite dominant now in the discourse. I think everything is a girl now, and also referring back to the podcast I just listened to, you're talking about Charlie XCX and the Brad Summer, which has just been 2 years ago, but the girls that and the referral to these artists and performers and actresses as girls was sort of like a part of the machinery of making them into icons in a
yeah,
sense and a global media stars, which is subversive but sort of a part of the giant transition from this enigma in between becoming part into something more condensed and understandable. And even though a lot of them, I would presume, are fighting this rigidity of a form they are entering, it's still a part of this. And so, in the girlhood idea and studies and everything about the girl, there is no finite sort of form. The girl, as the title of a show says, it's in between, but also there is no there is no way of making a girl your hero superstar because she is not finite. She cannot be fully captured. I have a feeling. And so in fairy tales, as opposed to films that are like with a protagonist and
Mm,
sort of a narrative, I have a feeling that girls have a bit more freedom of being girls. Just like there is more girlhood to it. They're like
mm,
becoming. Maybe I'm completely wrong here because like a lot of films are based on fairy tales in a sense and the hero's journey or whatever. But I have a
mm,
feeling there is something a bit more in between about it, and the defining feature is actually not the character but what surrounds it.
mm,
So in that
mm.
regard, I was curious to to think a bit this way, but it's just
Yeah, I think there's a lot of threads there. I think that, yeah, I suppose that the one way in which to relating to what you're saying, to like summarize my approach is it is a bit anti this idea that girlhood is like an atmosphere and like in the ether and that kind of like, I think I've said this before, the kind of tikkunification
yeah.
of this idea of the girl, because I think for me these kinds of, through cinema, through items of dress, whatever it is, these kind of images basically that kind of circulate and form and shape ideas of girlhood. I think part of my being drawn towards this topic has been to kind of like bring the girl like back into it, and the sense of experience and memory, and when you're talking about aesthetics of girlhood sort of together with like the experience of girlhood, of course part of those experiences and memories are like when you take on the aesthetics of girlhood. So of course it's not strictly limited to some kind of cisgender sort of strict idea
Hmm.
of the girl. It's not that at all. It's that these images and symbols kind of circulate in culture, and I think that can be this and mean something to us, to many people. I think that's why people relate to the topic. And that, I suppose, again, just kind of like working a little bit against this idea, which has come about in sort of theory, digital media theory, um,
Hmm.
of like this girl's kind of like she's everywhere and all at once, and she's like not really there. And I think that that can be, I think for a kind of for any kind of area of interest or topic in culture to kind of be alive and healthy, you have all these different points of view and perspectives in terms of how you're looking at that media and culture, right? So this is just mine. I think anyone who's spending time in their spare time thinking about something in this world where we all have to work and get on with other things has to have some kind of drive to it. And I think for me, the kind of continually returning to the idea of girlhood in my writing, etc., has been a bit of a reaction maybe to that other side of it from reading the Tikkun, etc., when I was like studying digital media theory like 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and kind of trying to bring back a little bit of the soul and meaning into this stuff. I think that's kind of my, yeah, like I've spoken before also about like these emotional points of connection. This idea
Yeah.
that you can do theory and you can research while bringing like emotion and personal connection to it. And that is not something that everyone agrees with, but that's for me what I do. And I think with girlhood especially, it's important because you're looking at a lot of women artists who, of course, have themselves been drawn to this topic through their personal memories and experiences. So many women filmmakers, artists, they're especially in their early works, they're thinking about that time, that when they like were becoming. And I think that's a very powerful draw for many, 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 many women creatives. But again, just anti this idea of like it's only one thing or the other, right? Like girlhood is terrible. What a horrible thing to go through, and
No.
it's awful. And girls are surveilled, and they're not respected in culture. And then this other thing where girlhood is like this shiny thing where you're beautiful and young and everything's wonderful. It's not. These are two extremes that often happen in terms of how girlhood is spoken about. So I've no idea if any of that answers your question, but I think it's just a bit of the drive of my topic is it's like a kind of it's like parallel to other ways of thinking about girlhood, and I love that all these different things are happening, but I'm sometimes wary of, as I say, that kind of tikkun era internet theory stuff, which is like sometimes coming from like men about girlhood. it's
Yeah.
you have to. it's not really how I see it, maybe, but it informs it, you know. Yeah.
I totally see what you mean, and also, I mean, I clearly didn't have a question. I just posed the field to walk around, but as I would feel it, I think it was also why also so going so deep into all your topics that you go through that there is like such a log of things that you went through, from like archetypical items to the specific gestures to the specific seasons and colors. And then it made me think about even, okay, what would be a specific patterns that I would associate with girlhood. And somehow I was like, you know what, I think stripes. And I, I went into this whole idea of like, yeah, the stripy shirt is so awkward, but somehow this is this perfect item that you would wear when you're like 11, that is like neither
Yes.
here nor there. And nobody like horizontal stripes then would be like, no, they're horrible, don't wear horizontal stripes. They would make you feel look fat or whatever. But there was something, you know, that like it digs in into something else, something very physical, or like attached to a physical item. Whereas I agree
Yeah.
that this ideas of like media and digital are very theoretical, very like how you call it, cerebral. And
Mm,
in that regard, I for me the tension is I kind of, if I zoom out a little bit, if I pretend to be a young girl, all I actually have and experience are the physical things that I can like summon or wear. But then I enter sort of an adult version of myself where I can conceptualize who I am. And that's where the girl dome of media theory opens
yeah.
up, and I become a part of this conversation via all the
Yeah.
images that I reflect on. And that's
Yeah.
sort of like before I enter this stage, I'm just with the physicality of it,
Yeah.
but I have sort of an idea of where this physicality will bring me. So this physical items, they're like a bridge sort of in a fairy tale where I go from to
Yeah.
the magic forest, the dark forest of the bab of the girldom. And it's really
Yeah.
actually, I think your writing really brings me back to this like village where I didn't go to that forest yet, you know? And it's really
Yes.
nice to be there sometimes.
Exactly, exactly, to be there sometimes. And I think that that's why, you're laughing as you say it, but yes, stripes are really important. They're really important. And I think about stripes and I think about like cartoon characters on TV shows when you're first watching them and the kind of really obvious block colors that kind of cartoon character versions of girls would wear. Then I think about I was writing about Marc Jacobs recently, and I was thinking about Mark by Marc Jacobs, and I was thinking about like a vertical pink and black striped dress that Sophia Coppola wore in like 2003. And then I was like
Mhm.
looking for the image and I couldn't find it. It's like it's very, and then you have like Jean Seberg in the catalog essay we're talking about with like the stripy top, the breast, it just yeah, I find it. I think you're right, and I think maybe part of it is a comfort thing. I've very much myself. I mean, I'm not sure how old you are, but I've grown up with these images circulating on the internet, and I think that it's it's like both at once, isn't it? I'm very interested in the kind of crazy world of images and how fast they travel and how much they travel. But it's also exhausting. And in terms of representations of girlhood and girls, it's everywhere and it comes with its own set of challenges, actually, especially as we get older. And, maybe it's a comfort blanket, but if my comfort blanket is like thinking really deeply about stripes, then it's no
Whatever is
harm
a
to anyone.
comfort blanket, like
Yeah, no
just
harm
be
to
there.
anyone with that. So I think it's
Yeah.
nice to, maybe because the world is very hectic and there are so many opinions and theories out there. I think I've really enjoyed, and I always have done, drilling down into those details. So for me, that's like, it'd be like one sentence of a book or one scene where someone is putting on some stripy socks in a movie and they're a girl and you watch them do that, it's yeah, it's something about yeah, it might be something about the comfort of those smaller moments. I don't know. But yeah.
I was also thinking that, well, I'm 30, just for the reference.
Mm,
But, and I remember that, I remember the time when there was way less information available. So, for me as well, growing up, I had, of course, I had images, but I would have to learn English to access them and to find where to go for them. And it would be word of a mouth. Like I've learned about Flickr because I had a cool friend who had another cool friend and who had traveled somewhere. And then they learned that there's Flickr. There was no other way to actually learn about stuff like that. You just had to be like told there's this website,
yeah.
which actually made all of those references, it made it golden. Like it was actually like so rare that you would see. I mean, I know we share love for Alexa Chung, but that was like, you know, one of the things I was like, wow, she exists. That's this girl, and she looks like this, and she also apparently listens to the same music I like because her boyfriend is in Arctic Monkeys. And I would be like, oh my God, who is she? And can I also go to Topshop and buy something? And then, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was a very rare currency in general. And I
Yes.
actually wanted to ask you, you say that girlhood is a process of self-research. And
Mm.
I'm curious how you build up your research and how you think it will be changed in the future for future girlhood researchers, because I think there is a lot to be said about how we got introduced to this information with each channels and the amount of it.
Definitely. Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think it's a really interesting question. I can see how through the years my like mode or method of research into this stuff is so directly informed by that process of discovery from my own girlhood years. So it's like the topic and then like the research method are like very closely interlinked. And that is satisfying. You know, that might not be something that everyone agrees with. You know, I've had thoughts where I think, you know, should I be doing a PhD? Should I be, you know, and then I date people who do PhDs and I think I'm never doing that. No way. But sorry, back to your question. I think that, you know, yeah, you know, I'm 34, so we're similar ish ages. My anyone reading between the lines of my writings of girlhood over the year can see these hints of what my own girlhood was actually like. It does come through, and you know,
Did you do ballet?
I did ballet when I was very little, but then
Okay, me too.
I yeah, I was very little though, and then I actually stopped because I didn't want to get up that early on a Saturday morning. And then my mum was
Fair.
like, "Well, I'm not going to pay for your lessons," but I kind of wish I'd continued. But who knows? 'Cause that's a whole other what girls go through who
Just
do ballet.
the
But
ballet shoes are
yeah,
really dominant.
they are very dominant. Yeah, I know. I think about them a lot, too much. But anyway, yeah, that kind of when I was a teenager, we had moved to a very small seaside town in Essex, known, you know, nationally known for its elderly population. So my entire process of discovering this stuff was purely through the internet. And it was very led by music at that time. And it was led by blogs, Blogspot, like the form of internet at that time, which was had that kind of mode of discovery embedded within it. And things were just random. And you just kind of dug in and dug in and dug in, and things would kind of show themselves to you. And it was messy and it was amazing. And, you know, part of my method of research now is that as I became more interested, you know, in cinema and image culture and kind of was writing more and more about that sort of alongside my work I was at Dazed magazine editing at that time. So this was kind of something I did on the side. Around that time, as I was developing the Girlhood Studies project, I happened to find an old external hard drive, which just said like Claire's stuff on it. And it was like my entire teenage years. And it's not only is it like photos of my friends and stuff and endless selfies that I've like taken like before the word selfie was used, but just photos I've taken of myself in my bedroom, my lonely teenage bedroom, you know, in Essex.
Photo
But
booth.
also like, yeah, photo booth and like the digital camera and just like setting the
Mm-hmm.
timer. It's all there. Plus all these weird screenshots and images I downloaded. It's a lot of like, you know, it's like Paolo Reversi like photographs of models, and it's like little cartoons and kind of anime stuff, and it's like bands I liked, like that I fancy, like these new Puritans and people like this of that
Mm-hmm.
specific era of indie music, and just funny little notes to myself and stuff. You know, it's very unordered, but it's like it's just my brain at that time in the mid 2000s, and it's I'm so lucky to have that. I think it has kind of played a role in this idea of the memories of girlhood, and then how I write about these materials of culture now. So that's part of it. And then in terms of the research method, yeah, to your point about where it goes in the future, I think for me, and I'm really thinking about this a lot at the moment, is how to get back that spirit of discovery, because the internet, how it operates now, and not in every space, but in the ones that I've become used to, like Instagram, is just being served the same thing over and over and over. And I'm just, when people kind of maybe not accuse, but maybe think of such a project as mine as like being just purely nostalgic, it's actually more future facing than that. I'm looking at the way I discovered things then as a way to like actually be able to keep doing that in the future. It's something I want to hold on to. And algorithmically, the way these platforms work now, it's like strangling that process of discovery. Like, I like Subway Takes as much as the next person, but I don't need to see it like 100 times. So I'm like, how can I discover the new? So I'm really interested in like, I really want to spend some time like, okay, what other places can I find things in? Like, do I need to get back on Pinterest? Do I need to go on Discord? Like, whatever it is, I'm really like, I'm curious if you do, because I just want to get back a little bit. The research needs, I think, that spirit of like almost like random discovery in a way. And as I get older, I want to maintain that. And I'm really keen to find ways to do that. But it's a bit, you have to resist kind of what you're being served all the time.
Yeah, 100%. Um, I, well, what I do is that every time I listen to some podcast or read an interview or anything, if there is a mention of something and I already like the person, I Google it straight away. Like, I have to know what is the book, what is the movie, what is that person they're mentioning. So but I think it's a bit of a habit that I have because I know that information is scarce. And when
Yes.
you don't have that idea that this is something you should do, when you get something you don't know, you start like learning more when you're sort of in passing constantly. I don't think that it would help. There's like, I don't think there's an app that would make, like, even if there were an app that would summarize, I don't know, Keith McNally book, for example, his biography. It's like
Mm,
such an entertaining read, but it's full of references. He's like,
yeah.
I think there should be 50 books he mentions at least. And I was so full into the narrative that I was like, okay, I'll figure it out later. But now I wish there would be like an app that would go through this book and be like, here's a list of his favorite books.
Yeah.
But if there is no, yeah, if a person doesn't know that this is what they need, I don't know how they would look for it. I also think that this idea by Maya Clad, the screen cap culture, right? Yes, screen cap
Yeah, Maya
culture.
Cade. Yeah, she's really incredible. Yeah, this is honestly, this screen cap culture thing is just something she said as like a side comment at one point.
Oh,
Like, it's
this
not even
really
part of
makes
her
sense.
main research.
I'm
But I
really
was like,
happy you
oh,
mention
yeah.
it because it's like, wait, there is so much. Yeah. It also made me think in general about, the magic of the yellow typeface over the image, like the
Yeah.
subtitles,
Yeah.
which is also, I think, dying thing. If everything's going to be translated by AI, nobody's ever going to know what it feels like to read the movie, truly read it, not because you're
Mm,
like sound off, but because you there's no other way to understand it.
Yeah.
And it's such a big part of just an idea that this is something foreign. I think it's beautiful
Yeah, no, that's yeah, totally. That's a really
visually.
nice way of putting it. And you know, I was a little bit back when I did my like master's thesis, which is now like 10, 11 years ago. I wrote about Tumblr for my like dissertation and about how images circulate on there and circulated at that time, and the kind of screen cap culture was really a big part of that. I was more like a blogspot era person, so I wasn't quite at that era of the internet. I was more, as I say, like studying it from slightly an older age at that point.
Yeah,
But I remember still certain screen caps. It's just there is something about them just that just stays with you. And I think the reason I like that idea of Maya's, which I guess for anyone listening is just in summary, that it's a bit of a defense of discovering film that way. You know, she created an entire archive, living archive of every film made by a Black filmmaker through her Black Film Archive. And it's something she did in the lockdown. But her journey to being a film curator, researcher, specifically around Black cinema, is, as she says, has said, directly informed by her time on Tumblr. It's like a defense of discovering movies that way. And I think that it, for me, that relates in a roundabout way to the way in which my work is a defense of how girls discover culture.
mhm,
And that it's that there's something quite magical about that. I know you mentioned to me before about girlhood as a kind of form of research, and I love that idea. I think it
mhm.
really rings true. So yeah, the scream cat culture idea relates to that, which is really just, you know, if you're discovering, if you have something recommended to you or discovering, you discover something through like, through just like that fleeting moment, I think it can lead you to dig deeper. My only concern now is the loss or the chipping away at of a research mentality just because of how strictly bounded the algorithmic kind of tunnels are, you know?
Yeah,
We need it to lead somewhere, and it's all very like inward facing the way that like Instagram works now and stuff, you
yeah.
know.
It used to be a little bit like there would be an original work, there would be Tumblr full of screen caps, and then it would lead you to find another original work. And now there
Yeah,
is just a funnel of identical images. Also, I find it
yeah.
interesting how the putting text on an image is such a, it's almost like an innate girlhood desire. I cannot say it's just like classic. It's something you do no matter what's the medium. Like girls on TikTok are also putting now, have you seen the pastel text on top of an image? It's a new thing. It's like yellow text is over, but now we have the pastels. And that would be like semi-moving, like almost still life video. And there would be like a quote or saying in a really like sans serif, simple font in pastel of purple. My favorite so far was seasonal depression is over, body dysmorphia is in. And just, seaside. It's like
But still this romanticism to it still, you
for
know,
sure,
like in
even
terms
in
of
the
how things are
choice of
being put together.
color.
Yeah.
Like, right? It's very, you could have chosen any kind of neon, but you choose the pastels.
Mm,
It's saying something. But I also was curious because of course the back a little bit to the exhibition and to the curation of the film, the specific moment that you chose to focus on is this moment of getting ready and getting dressed. And of course there is a lot to be said about how this moment of becoming has been commodified into the newer media via the Get Ready With Me videos, part of which I'm integrating in this podcast with Show Me What's in Your Bag, which we're going to do a bit later. But I'm curious about, I think it's a bit going back to actually to what we started with. Can we truly make it as a part of a girlhood when every girl already knows that that's a moment for performance and for a moment for recording or a moment that she's replicating somebody else doing
mm,
exactly the same, or where you have this moment of watching a makeup tutorial with a girl just like you and getting ready to look like her.
mm.
There is a bit of a like mimicking happening instead of just the
Yeah.
pure fantasy land of becoming,
Yeah. Yeah.
which also influences, I think, the choreography of this performance and experience and what it entails, like even how Vanity Table would look like right now,
Hmm.
etc.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And I think it sort of has like all these new medias like constantly shift, and actually like the stakes for girls, have changed so much in such a short amount of time. What
Hmm.
it means to them and their sense of self to put out images, moving images, at the end of the day has changed so much since, I mean, it's an obvious point, but since I was
Yeah.
posting things on MySpace or whatever. But I think to your point, what it kind of comes back to very often for me with this stuff is that it's not all good and wonderful, and it's not all like terrible either.
Yeah.
Ultimately, like a lot of this stuff has been commodified, but I'm very interested also in and there's convention and materialism, that stuff is like also embedded in how girls are and be or feel they have to be. Of course, the pressures are enormous, but I'm also really interested in, as ever in culture, even though it seems hyper accelerated now and the pressures seem enormous, as ever, and what feels eternal is these little eruptions of like rebellion amid all this. And I do think that there's this kind of streak of absurdism on TikTok that is still exists, and humor. And I find that really interesting, because to be humorous in that way about topics related to aesthetics of girlhood and femininity and beauty shows just a huge amount of, you know, you're smart, you're really
Yeah.
smart. And, it's a bit, maybe this is old news now, but a while back I was writing about coquettes and this idea of the coquette trend. And that the idea of coquetdom has a kind of mischief embedded in it. Yes,
Hmm.
it's beautiful. Yes, there's the issue of the whiteness and thinness. But there's this whole other movement within that when you actually looked at the material that was circulating, that was like pretty bows on like sanitary pads, and people like all different kinds of body types partaking in this trend. So I think there's this thing of like the kind of general, there's layers, right? I'm always like, okay, so here's the kind of discourse of like what this means to people. And then like people, often men, will write, isn't this terrible? How terrible that these girls are doing this. And and then we actually look at these kind of, as I say, these little eruptions of rebellion, what people are actually doing. It really like gives me faith,
Hmm.
and then you kind of think about what, say, a coquette really means historically, and it's
Hmm.
like, ah, yeah, the girls have always been using these like quite constricting ideas in a way, and then using them and kind of turning them into these kind of acts of rebellion and subverting them. Like that has been embedded in ideas of girlhood aesthetics that are very pretty and perfect
Hmm.
forever, because things that are pretty and perfect are not real. And I think something that
Yeah.
gets missed is the kind of self-awareness actually of girls. Um,
Very much
you know?
so. Yeah. I think that's exactly this dynamic between the media theory of the popular idea of a girldom online
Yes.
versus the physicality of living through it and actually being in that age where nobody believes you that you are actually already thinking for yourself. And then
Yeah.
you sort of have even the desire for this like white stockings that you also wrote about. When you're young, you understand they're going to get dirty and it's not practical and it's going to look horrible, but you're going for it regardless because it means something and you're sacrificing a lot for this discomfort or whatever, for the meaning, which
Mm.
then you grow out of it and you're like, no, I'm not gonna wear high heels, it's impossible. But when you're like 12, you're like, no, I'm gonna struggle the whole day at school just because it means something for me. And I think
Yeah.
this is a self-awareness which is often disregarded as stupidity, but there is thought behind it, which is
Well,
very
actually, you're
important.
thinking totally, and you're actually thinking too much at that age. It's
Yes.
awful to be thinking so much about how you planning and how you're going to look and like all this. Like it's yeah, it's not that it's stupid or unthinking. You're like overthink. You're like thinking so much, and I do think that, I'm very. I think that's so point. It's such a good point about the socks getting dirty. And I think for me, it's about kind of following these kind of symbols through time. And then you sort of,
Hmm.
you look at like punk bands that are female fronted that I've always been super interested in, and then like their use of white socks. And it's like, I think that you can just kind of follow these things through time. And there's a kind of I do think there's kind of a self-awareness in terms of how girls and then women dress themselves, especially around these items which are particularly symbolic of some idea of girlhood and girls that has been like made by men. And to me, like following the journeys of all these items is really, really interesting. But yeah, I think the thing is with when you're a girl as well, it's that mix of like confidence and a completely low, lack of confidence,
Yes,
confidence versus insecurity in this heightened combination, like I'm just interested in that. Like I'm interested in maintaining that in some way because like I'm way more self-conscious about doing anything weird with my hair now than I was when I was 16. But like, why is that when in most other ways I'm a way more confident person than I was when I was 16? So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a way of like having a conversation with yourself, and it's like a kind of powerful time in one's life. And I think for me, connecting with that through these things is interesting. It seems to be interesting for other people as well. So
for
um
sure. I
yeah.
think it's also exciting that everybody has their own um this, I call them horcruxes,
Yeah.
like in Harry Potter. We have our own, but we also have a communal ones, and I think that's where how you can relate there. Like there's a taxonomy that also goes a bit in layers. Like we have the king, like let's say white socks, but then it dissipates. And somebody would get stripy socks, and somebody would get the white socks with red dots. But in general, it's a family of white socks, and we can all relate to that. So
Yeah.
that's beautiful. Yeah, I also had like a question about what would be the thing from the now that would get into this world of Horcruxes of girlhood, which is, I don't know, like pop socket. I don't know. Something I
What, like
was
pop
thinking
sock?
about pop socket, the iPhone thingy.
Oh, I thought you said pop socks. Pop
I don't know
sockets.
what's the,
Yeah, I think no. Yeah, I don't have one of those, but I know what you mean. The thing that goes in your phone. Yeah.
yeah.
What would it be now? Well, it's the keyring, no?
The
Like
keyring, oh yeah, but it's kind of
on
coming
the
back. I
bag.
had so many when I was like 9. My backpack was invisible. It was a keyring display. So
Yeah, it's
also the
something that's
idea
come
that the
back.
first bag idea was just a keyring for the belt with multiple keyrings.
Ah,
There were no
yeah.
bags. It was just like chains with tiny things hanging on them, like a tiny scissor or a tiny notebook. Maybe there is nothing actually new. We're just gonna keep
No,
on
I
going
think
in circles.
I think there's an element of going around in circles for sure. I mean, look at all these girlhood trends that have kind of come back, but the feeling of like putting on a pair of very flat shoes is always going to feel like it did. This
Yeah,
is about being embodied in how we think about these things. But
yeah.
I think your point is a good one about it being to do with technologies, and
Hmm.
the phone is the ultimate accessory of
Yeah,
anyone
the
growing up
belt.
now, which is very different to my girlhood, at the end of the day. But
Yeah.
I just got sent a brick, these things to like lock your phone away from yourself. Have you seen
Hmm.
these? Some PR sent it to me, so they obviously realized how much time I spend on Instagram. I was like, this is quite revealing, but so
Thank
I
you.
I do like it though. Yeah, I was like, thank you so much. She said, I want you to help get your creativity back or something.
Wow. PR is PRing. Jeez. Okay.
Well, I love it, so thank you,
Yeah,
Brick.
thank you. um, I also was wondering if you have something that you never thrown away, like your girlhood thing that you keep forever with you. You have like actual blanket or something.
So I had an interesting one recently, because I got out some books and stuff before we were going to talk. So I do hold on to things, but I also had such a chaotic stretch of living in different houses, basically, which is classic of London renting in my
Mm.
20s, that so many things got lost. But I was just laughing at myself recently because I can't tell you how many like actual priceless, really sentimental sort of pieces of jewelry and such that I've lost through the
Mm.
years. Like, my grandmother's ring and all this stuff, and in all these house moves, just like losing those things.
Oh.
And then I find things from my teenage years that are worth nothing, and I still have them, including this old issue of this magazine I used to get, a couple of issues actually, Girl, which was in the UK. And I have this, but I've lost things
Wow.
that are so important, and I couldn't believe it.
The
And it's
print is the
such
power of print.
the power of print. Why have I been hawking this around with me for years?
That's insane.
And I did used to love this magazine because it was very different to the other teen girl magazines. It was much more about kind of self-expression. It had lots of like cool music, and the fashion was quite weird, and it was great. And the tagline was dare to be different, which was super nice.
That's cool.
But it is such a time capsule. It says like rock chick on the front. It's got Lizzie Jagger. So this is an original Nepo baby, Mick Jagger's
Wow.
daughter. But then it says the
The
truth about her eating disorder, which isn't so good. Um,
wow.
Kiss
So of the
chaste question
time.
mark. What happened to the girls who said no to sex? Gwen
Oh my
Stefani.
God.
Yeah, it's quite crazy, but I was kind of looking through and the shoots are so nice and I remember them in my head. It's crazy. And like I discovered who like Kate Bush was through this magazine, like it's anyway, to answer your question, I was really amazed to find this recently because and I was just really couldn't believe how many important things I've lost and I still have these old magazines. But um,
Beautiful.
I'm glad I have it. I am.
Do you keep your diary?
I'm not good at keeping a diary. I have a series of diaries that have been kept through sort of emotionally fraught periods. And then
Mm.
when things calm down, I don't write in my diary. I also, at
Same.
some point, just sort of got a therapist. So that kind of
Yes.
replaced but it's a shame. I would have loved to have kept like a teenage diary, a proper one. But I think the kind of hard drive I mentioned earlier is sort of
Mm.
the version of that. It's all images really, but I think that to me is the insight into me then that like don't have in the form of a diary.
Yeah. I was just thinking because this idea of like keeping the memories, some sort of like collecting things, I was really afraid of Alzheimer when I was like 13, 14. That's when I started. I don't know why. No, nobody
Wow.
had it in my surrounding, but I was just one day I realized I cannot recall what happened to me a week ago or something like that. I was like, I
Yeah,
don't remember exactly step by step what I did. And that's
which
when I
is
realized
totally natural.
because
Yeah.
it's, yeah, because I was finally getting to the age that there were so many memories that I couldn't really keep them all in. And I got so, so scared that from 14 years old, every year I have this diary where I try to put things I've done that day. But with years, of course, I got worse and worse with that. And at this point, it's just every ticket of every show, every film, restaurant, just a note like where I went, the trip I took, whom I've seen, if I remember. But sometimes the pages are blank for like 3 months. But the idea of having that stored, it has to happen. Like, I don't know why. Maybe I think I'm like going to be like Susan Sontag with her son one day, like publishing. Today I bought milk and a carton of eggs, and then I went home and cried for 6 hours. Don't write that down, but yeah, I don't know. That somehow is very important, and to that feeling, I was also wanted to say, in a sense, thank you because not in a sense, but yes, thank you. The movie Drop Dead Gorgeous was on my watch list for literally 15 years, and I just started watching it yesterday. because I was preparing for this talk, and
Yeah.
again I opened like all the tabs with everything I haven't seen, and I was like, I think it's time. And it came from you mentioning in your first Girlhood Studies Kirsten Dunst as your first girl smile, I think, that you write about. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, um, yeah, Kirsten Dunst really just pushed something forward. Is it your favorite actress?
Kirsten Dunst, yeah, she is one of my favorite actresses. She's one of my favorite like kind of actors in culture as well, just how she is. She's one of these few figures really who transitions from being a child actor into, a long and fruitful career. It's interesting for that reason in terms of thinking about girlhood. I think she's just at that point as she's becoming a teenager. Obviously, she then starts working with Sofia Coppola, which like, embeds her in these ideas forever. But she's kind of at that point where things were still very unstyled, things were very like natural, So I think as I recall, I probably began the Girlhood Studies column proper with Kirsten because, as I say, she's almost seems like the kind of ultimate symbol of a lot of these ideas. And she's kind of blonde and beautiful, but then she has these kind of imperfections as well. It's like there's something very interesting to me about her as like a how she transposes between the interface between her as like a figure, like a person, a girl, and then the kind of as an actress and a kind of symbol of a kind of all Americanness that is interesting to me. It's interesting to me. She kind of a bit like a Chloe Sevigny or something. It's like it's not
True.
like all their
That's
movies are my favorite movies ever, but they just seem to symbolize something about if you are thinking about fame, image, girlhood, you can't get away from these figures.
yeah.
They're important in the way they thread through.
In this article, you talk about the difference between Drop Dead Gorgeous and the Virgin Suicides, and I think that's exactly the difference of like perceived girldom versus the girldom
Yeah.
lived through, and then with the added mix that Kirsten Dunst herself was growing up in the public eye, that
Yeah,
actually adds this. It kind of links this whole dynamic into one girl
totally,
becoming
exactly.
story. Yeah,
Totally, totally. She represents a lot to do with that. And also just being a child actor, Interview with the Vampire that whole time and all the kind of creepiness around that, there's a, beyond creepiness when you look at some of those contemporary sort of interviews. Yeah, it's interesting to me because obviously Drop Dead Gorgeous is kind of like it's so much more a film like in the
it's
mainstream,
hilarious.
like a kind of comedy, but also it's really weird too, like it's this kind of mockumentary and it's actually like super like subversive in other ways. So I think sometimes with the girlhood writing I'm keen to not just engage with like cool indie movies or whatever.
Yeah,
I think it's really important to think
actually.
about how these things are operating
Yeah.
in the mainstream when you're thinking about images of girlhood because it's like yeah everywhere.
I watched it in tandem with Girlhood, the film, the French
Mm.
by uh,
Linciana,
Cecilia.
yeah.
Yeah, I felt like the girls there were so much observed by the director that I
Yeah,
felt like I'm intruding, and it's way less real than the Drop
yeah.
Dead Gorgeous, which is obviously a staged mockumentary. And I think this
Mm,
sometimes, but that's the filmmaking question. So it's
yeah,
been a wonderful hour. I think we need to already wrap it up, and I would love
yeah.
to do a bag TSA with you, if you don't mind telling me what's in your bag.
Okay, but this my bag is going to be from yesterday.
That's all right. Oh, but that's good to know. So you could have different day bag
Well,
a
I've just been
day.
at home today. So, well,
Yeah,
I kind of
it's
have my
okay.
work bag,
You don't have
Okay.
to show everything if you don't want. It's okay.
I'll, I'll get it. Okay, so I don't think we should really do this for the Instagram picture, but this is my work bag.
That's a very revealing thing. So please
I know.
approach it as you wish. Feel comfortable.
Yes. Well, because basically what I normally do is I have my bag that I bring to my studio every day. So it has like
Mhm.
lots of practical things. So I have an umbrella,
It's very northern hemisphere.
a very uncool laptop bag.
They don't make them cool.
No, and you need something that actually protects. I have a Tangle teaser with all my hair in.
Yes.
I do have a book, so I'm reading. I want to write my next column about diaries, writers who have used their teenage diaries to publish books. This is
Wow.
Bell Hooks's book, Bone Black Memories of Girlhood. So, which I got on eBay. And it's very red and it's a lovely edition. And yeah, it's like a memoir basically of like her
Mhm.
girlhood years. So I'm just starting that. And I have various like pads and sanitary things. I have some actually, this is good. I have Starface
Do they
for my
work?
spots. I actually do find they work and I find them very cute. So
I like
my
them.
friend Shard told me I'm not allowed to wear these in public and I should only wear them at home. But I don't agree.
I think
So
they're very youthful. I think if you
they're
wear
very
that
useful.
outside, it's really like
I
count
have my
easy.
brick that I mentioned
Oh, the
earlier.
brick! It's really small.
Yeah, you tap it basically. You tap your phone and then it says all your apps don't work.
Locked.
The ones you choose.
Wow.
Yeah. Tampons.
Tampons are like the most frequently mentioned item on this podcast so far.
Yes. I have some hair slides, another horcrux of girlhood.
I
They're very
honestly, to this
plain
day,
curvy
cannot
grips.
figure out how to use them. I think this is something I lost so much hair to just because I don't understand. And I don't understand how many do I need to hold anything in place and where do I put them? And then I look like a metal egg. Like, it's crazy. But
Well,
I find them really charming. Also, like 1920s hairdos. Gosh, gorgeous. Just not
yeah.
in my
Well, they're
wheelhouse,
so
probably.
Yeah, well, they're so old. This form of like a just very plain Kirby grip exactly is from like the
Yeah.
20s. It's so cool. I have some Glossier lip liner and lip gloss. I've just discovered lip liner at the grand age of 34. So I have some mints and a charger, a phone charger. I have these pens that I use, the Stedler like yellow ones, which I like the most. And I have a measuring tape.
Thank you so much, Claire.
No, thank you. Thank you so much. It was so
um,
fun.
this was Back Talk. I'm Elizaveta Federmesser. This was Claire Marie Healy. See you soon.
Ciao. Thank you so much.
Bye.